Welcome to The Rainbow Connection. This podcast was designed for mothers who are finding their way through life after loss. Whether you're grieving, trying to conceive again, newly pregnant, or holding hope in your heart for what's to come, this space is for you. Each week you'll hear real and tender stories of love, heartbreak, healing, and the babies who continue to shape us. I'm your host, Kristen Mundy, a mother, doula, and a woman who's walked this path too. May these conversations remind you that you are not alone, that your baby is never forgotten, and that hope and grief can live here together. Are you trying to conceive after loss, or maybe thinking about trying to conceive after loss? I know this journey can feel so incredibly heavy, lonely, and overwhelming at times. The hopes, the fears, the grief. It can really feel like no one truly understands what you are actually carrying. And that's exactly why I created Mother Like No Other, a nurturing, flourishing community for women navigating this tender season. Here, you are not just joining a group. You are stepping into a space where your feelings are held, your experiences are understood, and your journey is honored. You'll connect with other lost moms who truly get it, learn practical tools to help you through those really hard days, and gain guidance from me and other guest speakers on the topics you're really wanting to learn. Each month, we come together for a learning workshop where we dive into topics like grounding strategies, self-advocacy, and nurturing your mind, body, and soul. It's a place to feel supported, to grow, and to prepare for the journey ahead without judgment, without pressure, and without long-term commitment. For only $22 a month, you can join when you need it most. If you're ready to feel seen, held, and understood, come join us. Find all the details at thedoulalife.ca/motherlikenoother. I hope to see you inside. Today on The Rainbow Connection, I'm honored to share the story of Siobhan Koch, a mother whose path to parenthood has been anything but straightforward. After over a decade of infertility, Siobhan became a mother in many different ways, through foster care, adoption, loss, and eventually through her pregnancy and her birth. In this episode, she opens her heart about the miracle and heartbreak of her daughter Talitha, born after her waters broke at just 18 weeks, and the sacred but brief time they spent together. She also shares what it was like to grieve while parenting, the small mercies that carried her through, and the surprise rainbow pregnancy that brought her son, Silas, safely into her arms. This conversation is raw and tender, but it is deeply, deeply human. It's a story of longing, of loss, and of course, of love, and the courage it takes to hope again after your heart has been broken. Okay, now enough from me. Let's hear from Siobhan. Hello, I have beautiful Siobhan here at the podcast. Welcome to the Rainbow Connection, Siobhan.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy you're here, and I'm really looking forward to our chat today. Siobhan and I have followed each other for a while on Instagram, so this is the first time we actually get to chat face to face. There's a lot of parallels to our story and our timeline, so we have a lot of similarities, and it's been really nice going on this journey with her. She has two stories to share with us today, an angel baby story and a rainbow baby story. But before we dig into those, Siobhan, why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, hi, everyone. I'm Siobhan Koch, and I live in Hamilton, Ontario with my husband and my two sons. And then our daughter, Talitha, is our angel baby, who I can't wait to share her story as well. But I'm going to share this a little bit through the podcast, but my journey to motherhood was just one that was kind of long and winding. It started through foster care, actually, and I was a foster mom for 5 years. And then our son, Paul, he came into our life through adoption when we were not expecting it whatsoever. And that could be its whole own, podcast episode even. And then we walked through an infertility journey for over 10 years and became pregnant with Talitha. And then we lost her, and I'll share her story in a little bit. And then just a year and a bit after that, had our miracle baby, Silas. And so that is our family right now. Outside of family life, I run a charity where we build tiny houses to create affordable housing for those who might be most vulnerable to homelessness. And right now I'm just in a season of spending time with my babies, and I'm home with them and just trying to soak up every single moment of it.
I love that. Well, I'd really love to hear about your baby. So wherever you want to start, we are, go ahead and we'd love to listen.
Yeah. Well, my husband and I, we have been married for 14 years. And about 2 years into our marriage, we decided to start trying to get pregnant. And we tried for probably about 2 years, 3 years, going to doctors, trying to get medical answers as to why we weren't getting pregnant. We kind of got the runaround of you're just stressed, or maybe it's this, all of these things that weren't actually relevant to our fertility story. And then I found out I had PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that began our journey through actual fertility treatments, having a little bit of a plan of where to go forward. And we walked through that journey for quite a few years. And then, like I said, our son, Paul, he kind of fell into our laps through the adoption process because we were foster parents. We were just already ready and prepared for him, but we weren't thinking about adoption at the time. And he was just the most beautiful miracle, the way that he came into our lives. And so we adopted him in 2017. After that, a couple of years into that, I really dove deep into fertility treatments. For us, we had this strong desire not only to grow our family, but to give Paul a sibling. Both my husband and I grew up with siblings, and that sibling relationship has been so important to us. And so we were grieving the fact that he had no siblings, and we wanted that for him. And so walking through that many years of fertility treatments, we did IUI, 8 IUIs, we walked through IVF, and then in this really difficult season, again, it's a long story, but I had a cancer scare and had to have a lymphaectomy done. And we had just done our egg retrieval and our embryo creation right before that surgery. And so in the summer of 2022, I was recovering from that surgery, and we were waiting to do our embryo transfer. And miracle of miracles, we got pregnant naturally.
Wow.
Or unassisted is, another way that I like to say it. So we got pregnant unassisted, and what a surprise. I did 4 pregnancy tests because it was just a total shock to go 12 years of infertility and then get pregnant totally unassisted after, all of those years of money and treatments was just a total shock. And so I got pregnant over the summertime, and this pregnancy was just all of the joy. And to be honest, I went into it so confident because I thought there is no way that this miracle baby wouldn't make it because she's a miracle. I was like, I just really felt like, of course she'll make it and she'll be here. And so I walked through that pregnancy with so much confidence. And we made it halfway through my pregnancy. And then with no complications, everything was moving really smoothly. I had great care from our fertility clinic as well as a midwife team. And so we were being followed, closely, taking some of the extra precautions that those who would have walked through infertility would take. And then halfway through my pregnancy, on just a random Monday morning, I finished up a staff meeting on Zoom, and I went to pick up some toys quickly from my son, Paul. And as I bent down, my water broke. And at the time, to be honest, I thought I had peed my pants because it felt so foreign that this could be happening. But I called my midwife.
It's not uncommon, right?
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
So you're about 20
I
weeks pregnant.
I was 18 weeks pregnant. Yeah.
Okay.
At that point. And, yes, I called my midwife, and, she was very calm. I was hysterical and crying. And I said, I don't know what this is, but I think my water broke. And so she had me come into the hospital. She was actually already there. And so something through this journey of loss that I have shared with people is we call them like small mercies. It's in this horrible season and this horrible thing that happened, these like small mercies of the journey that either gave us peace or just felt like, yeah, a small mercy in the journey. And so one of it was that she was at the hospital already. And so I didn't have to wait in the ER because where I was in my pregnancy, normally she said the process would have been just waiting in the ER for hours and waiting to see a doctor. But she was able to have me come straight up to labor and delivery. And so I called my husband. He was at work. He met me in labor and delivery, and then we proceeded to do, the series of tests to confirm that it was amniotic fluid, and yes, my water had broken. And then it just felt like a nightmare unraveling for us. It was, walking through all of the steps of, I wasn't in active labor at the time. And so it was really a waiting game. So we were at just kind of a regular hospital in Hamilton, and we needed to be transferred to McMaster University, where they have the maternal fetal medicine unit who, works with babies born under 24 weeks. And so we were transferred over to McMaster and then began the process of just hearing day after day of what the possible outcomes might be. And so they laid it out, if she's born now, this is what it's going to look like. If we can hold on to 20 weeks, this is what it'll look like. If we can hold on to 22 weeks, this is what it will look like. And the dream was 24 weeks, to which at McMaster is a viability for a pregnancy. But even then, we just listened to all of the detrimental outcomes of a baby born at 24 weeks. And they, laid it out. I remember just coming home from the hospital that day, and we had been in the hospital all day. And at that point, they sent us home and they said, at this point, it's a waiting game. There's nothing we can do to stop labor because I was so early in my pregnancy. They had said to me, if you were 2 weeks further or 3 weeks further, we might have been able to prolong labor long enough to reach viability. But at this point, it was too dangerous for me for them to try and stop labor because of my water breaking. And so we went home and we waited. And the thing that really resonated with me is it felt like even all of these pieces of this pregnancy that I had dreamed of, even if she had made it, the dreams of my pregnancy, those were gone. It felt like they were just washed away in like a second. Because you dream of just everything going perfectly, right? And so we just went home and we waited, and I had friends come over, and we come from a faith background. So we prayed, and I spent hours reading on the internet stories of women whose waters had broken, this premature amniotic fluid break, and women who had their waters had broken even before mine and had success stories of beautiful babies. And for me, I needed to fill my head with the possibility that this might not be the end. And then each day we went back to McMaster and we checked in, we did further ultrasounds, and she was alive. She was alive through all of it. And that was this piece that gave us hope, is that she was actually doing well, even with reduced amniotic fluid. And I just kept, hoping and praying, how can we hold off labor with actually having nothing medical that could hold off labor? And I went 3 days, and then late into the evening on the third day, contractions started, and they came fast and heavy, and she was almost born at home. And I remember, I said to my husband, we have to go now. And thankfully, my sister lives with us, and she could take my son, Paul. Otherwise, I don't think we would have made it on time to the hospital. It was so quick that we didn't even have time to park. My in-laws lived close to the hospital, and we picked up my father-in-law. He was waiting for us on the side of the road. We picked him up because I knew we wouldn't even have time to park the car. We rushed into the hospital, and I remember I can remember so vividly getting into the car and just crying and saying to my husband, I feel like I failed us. Like I felt so much weight of feeling like my body had failed our daughter, feeling like my body had failed my husband, had failed me. Like it just was this piece. And obviously, there's nothing we could have controlled about that. There's nothing I could have done differently. Like it was just this random, horrible kind of statistic of, they just kind of said to us, 0.5% of pregnancies end in this premature water breaking, and you're just too early. Like it was just too soon. And so I gave birth at McMaster, and there were beautiful moments of that birth. Like I think one of the things with loss is people don't ask you about your birth story because they think it's too painful. But actually it's the thing I wanted to talk about the most was her birth story. And we, were given a private room, and we had this incredible, incredible team to, our labor and delivery team. Because we delivered in an MFM unit, they are trauma informed. And that, again, when we talk about these small mercies, is having a medical team that understood the gravity of what was happening. And I remember I had a nurse that she stayed by my head. And I remember as they were asking me to push, because I knew she was alive on the inside and birthing her would be her death. And it just felt like this impossible thing to ask a mother for their baby who's safe inside to deliver and bring them to the world where they won't live. And I just remember having this nurse beside me, and she just whispered in my ear, constantly, "You're so strong. You can do this," and just that encouragement. And as she held my hand, she cried, and not in a way that took away from our grief, and not in a way that made me feel like I had to carry her feelings or emotions, but in a way that made me feel like I wasn't alone and I wasn't by myself. And so she was born, Talitha is what we named our daughter. Talitha was born at 8:30 in the evening. And when she was born, we didn't know for sure that she would have lived through the labor process. But I remember a nurse, he took her, and the minute he realized she was still alive, he laid her on us, on my chest, and they just left the room. The doctors and the nurses, they left the room, and they just let us be with her, and they let us hold her. And so we got to hold her for, her living moments, all of them. And we got to just honor her the best way that we could. I say we christened her with our tears. And all that being said, we were also in a lot of shock, and when I look back at that night, there was just, a lot of shock and a lot of trauma pieces too. But those moments, they were just these sacred moments of birth. And I will forever be grateful that she was alive and we got to hold her for all of her living moments. And that she got to feel deep love for her entire life. Afterwards, I had struggles with my placenta, delivering it, because I was so early in the process. And so we got to be with her for about an hour. And then I actually hemorrhaged from my placenta not detaching. And so my poor husband, he was holding our daughter in his hands, and they rushed me into the ER because I was hemorrhaging and bleeding out, and, just had him sign papers for a blood transfusion and all of the things. And then he was left actually to wait by himself for over an hour, not knowing if I would live, knowing that our daughter had not lived. And so at that point, I was unconscious. And so most of it was not as traumatizing for me, but for him, that our birth story is very traumatizing. And so that's one of the things that was a struggle for us, even after those days after we came home from the hospital, was that for me to talk to her about my birth story felt very beautiful because those traumatic pieces I was unconscious for. But for him, it was such a different story and a different experience. And I'll share a little bit more about that, but that came into play later with my birth story with our son. And yeah, so because of that, and because my water had broken 3 days prior, I ended up with a uterine infection. And so we had to stay at McMaster for 3 days afterwards. While I fought the infection and while they monitored this hemorrhage that I had had. And for some people, that would have been like a really hard 3 days. But for me, I'm so thankful for it. I think it gave us a transition time where it felt like this time of before and after, it let it really sink in that this had happened. And we were given the gift that we got to keep her with us for those 3 days. And so they had a cooling cot and she stayed in my room until we left the hospital. And it meant that our family got to come and see her and hold her. It meant that I got to hold her for, I won't say as long as I needed, because it was, it can never be as long as you need. But I got to hold her for every minute that I could. We got to photograph her. Our son Paul got to come and meet her. And that was a really difficult decision of what to do. When you lose a baby and you have a 6-year-old son and you're trying not to traumatize them the best way that you can. And again, when I say small mercies, one of the things that, because we birthed at McMaster, and again, they do this and they have an MFM unit. Before I left the ICU, they wouldn't let me leave the ICU until I met with a social worker. And initially I thought, this is so silly, because what could a social worker do in this moment? Like, she can't help. She can't change it. And at the time, I just wanted to be out of the ICU so that our family could come and visit, because they couldn't visit until I was transferred to a regular room. But we waited and we met with a social worker, and what a gift she was, because she answered all these questions that I didn't even know I had. And all of the questions about what to do for a funeral and which funeral homes take care of babies and cover the costs, and, all the things I wouldn't have known. How to apply for maternity leave, because I didn't even know I would qualify for maternity leave. But one of the things she did is she sat us down and I asked her, what do I do about my 6-year-old son who has been waiting for this sibling, and how do I even begin to process it? Do I let him hold her? Do I let him see her? Am I just going to traumatize him? So I met with the social worker and she sat us down and she really gave me all the information I needed to walk my son through the process. And one of the things she said is, let him lead. You let him decide if he wants to hold her, let him decide if he wants to see her. And so when my son came in, we had her in the cot kind of behind us, and he didn't know that we had lost the baby. And so we had to, my husband and I had to sit him down and talk him through it and walk him through it. And the very first thing he said is, well, I want to see her. And I thought, I had to share with him, she's not going to look like the babies you think she's going to look like. She's not going to look like the babies we've seen. And he said, oh, I don't care, Mommy. I want to see her. And so we uncovered her and he goes, oh, Mommy, she's so cute. And it just was this, it broke my heart. And also it was just a little bit of peace, that he needed to see her.
She is so cute.
She is so cute. Yeah. And it was just this beautiful piece of, like he needed to see his sister. And so again, no one would say, well, I hope I get a uterine infection if my water breaks early. But also I'm so thankful for those 3 days in the hospital, because it gave us closure, I think, that I wouldn't have had otherwise, or pieces of closure.
It didn't just catapult you back into regular life.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And it was again like this transition time to say, it was a big deal. And it's a lot of healing that has to come from this. And so, yeah, that was the birth of Talitha, our daughter. And she's changed me in ways that I never could have imagined. That walking through grief has it made me a new person. I'm not who I was before I had her. I'm not who I was before we grieved her and lost her. But I will forever be grateful for her story. And I can remember a friend. I had just these beautiful friends who came around us, and this one friend who I called her, I think, at 1 a.m. crying, and she was one of the first to say, "Would you tell me your birth story? Would you tell me about it?" And I walked it through, and I was sharing with her, though, how cruel it felt to walk through 12 years of infertility, or 10 years at the time of infertility, and then lose her in such a random, 0.5% chance. And she asked that hard question. She said, well, would you have rathered it not happen? And without even thinking, I said, no, of course not. Like, I would do it all over again, even just for those seconds of holding her and those minutes of holding her. And so, yeah, it was just this reminder that it is so hard and feels unbearable. And yet I would do it all over again in a second.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. It is really beautiful, and I'm glad that God bless that friend, but also I'm glad that you get to share her birth story again, because you're right, it's really important. It's the moment that, the moment we step into like the physical world of being a mother, and well, it's really important. That was probably, the biggest moment of your life. And just imagine someone not asking you about the biggest moment of your life.
And I think too, when you are a mother of loss, you have so few moments with your baby, right?
So few.
You don't get to make a lifetime of memories that you share with people. And so to have space to share that story, that is it is their story, right? And so what a gift to be able to share it.
While we take a quick break, I wanted to introduce you to The Haven, my signature 12-week support program for mothers who are pregnant again after miscarriage, TFMR, stillbirth, or infant loss. The Haven isn't just a course. It's a trauma-informed, community-centered space that includes weekly live workshops, expert guest speakers, and ongoing support from me, your dedicated pregnancy after loss doula, anytime you need it. You'll also receive one-on-one check-ins, guided journaling prompts, full access to my birth course Reclaim, and a warm, intimate community of other pal mothers, a place where you can truly be real, be held, and be reminded that you are never alone in this. Our fall cohort begins this September, and enrollment is now open. Find all the details at thedoulalife.ca/the-haven. Inside the Haven, your baby is remembered, your voice is honored, and you are fully supported every step of the way. So, Siobhan, what did life look like for you and your family after Talitha? I mean, we don't want to say after because she's still with you guys, but what did the days, months, what did life look like after her birth?
There's so many pieces of it that we were just walking through life in shock, right? And dissociated from a lot of the experiences early on. But it felt like our world stopped, to be honest. We lost her November 30th, 2022. And so we were in the midst of Christmas season, there's no good season to lose a baby. but also Christmas felt like an impossible season.
I feel that big time.
Yeah, it just felt so terrible. But I really do feel like my world stopped. I had a couch in the corner of my living room that looked out onto the street. We live in the second and third story of our house. And I just remember watching people walk by, and we have a park across the street, and going to the park and thinking, oh, it must be so nice to just live a normal life, because I just felt like I was up there watching and feeling just hopelessly broken is kind of the best way to describe it. And so because I also was recovering physically from this infection and the hemorrhage that I had, I couldn't do very much. And so, and nor did I want to. And so those early weeks, honestly, like I cannot explain it well to somebody, but the days feel like they flew by, and yet I did nothing. I sat in the corner and I cried and I grieved, and I would say I deep dove into stories of loss. For me, I felt so alone, and I needed stories. And so I read books, or I was on Instagram, like looking at posts that people had made. That's how I came across you. And for me just to have that space to not feel alone was huge. At the same time, we also had a 6-year-old home with us that we had to take care of. And so, really, I felt like I was just living in these two worlds, that when he was at school or away with family, we had a beautiful, supportive family that took care of him really well for us. And so when he was not with us, I grieved and I cried, and I gave myself permission in the hospital before we came home to say, like, no masks, no, it's fine. It's, I really felt like this will be the thing that might break me. And so I'm going to take the time to heal and to feel it all and to grieve in a way that I need to. And so no apologies for the amount of time it took. No, to give myself permission to do that was a really big step. But then when my son was home, it felt like, well, now I need to be on for him. And he was kind of the only person that I was willing to be on for, per se. And try and put a brave face on for him. And so we really took months to winter, and both my husband and I. So my husband stopped work for about 6 months, and I was off work for 9 months, and we took time just to cocoon as a family. We pulled our son out of school a lot that year. We went away to Florida for a week, just my husband and I, and then we came home and we looked at each other, and I was like, I'm still sad and it's still cold. And so we got our son back in the car and we drove back to Florida for 2 weeks and just turned around, and so it was permission to do some of those kind of crazy things. But yeah, the best way to describe it is just that our world, it stopped, and it broke both of us in a way that we knew we couldn't just plow through, and come out the other end well in a way that would serve our son. And so we both did a lot of therapy. I did, private therapy. I did group therapy, and he did private therapy. We did therapy together. We did therapy apart. I did a lot of EMDR therapy just to be able to function. And so it was a season of what I would say is trying to get well and not get over the grief and not get over her, but just to get healthy.
What did you guys, I find that with a lot of, lost moms I speak with, I find that they either feel this deep need to try again right away, or they're like, no, I can't even think of trying. I need time to heal. What did that look like for you guys? Where were you falling on that?
I think we would be at the end of trying again quickly. I deeply wanted to get pregnant as quickly as possible because it felt like it was twofold. It felt like it could be, I don't know if distraction is the right word, or if I knew it could be, if I understood how healing it could be. And then the other piece of it was when you've walked through so many years of infertility, it felt like this desperate act to try and see if it was possible again. Because I really had to come to terms that she might be my only pregnancy. I was 38 when I lost her, and I knew in the fertility timeline, I didn't have that much time per se because it took 10 years to get her. And so I thought, well, what if it takes another 10 years to get pregnant? But at the same time, I wanted to try and find out all the answers I needed. And so we did a biopsy of her placenta to try and see if that would give us any answers. We ran tons of blood tests. I went for ultrasounds, all of the things, because I wanted as many answers as I could get. In the end, we got no answers. But one of the things was that I had 2 embryos from our IVF process, and I also had a fibroid, and I wanted to have that fibroid removed prior to getting pregnant because I just wanted to give myself the very best chance to have another baby. And so I went on a wait list to have this fibroid removed. With our medical system right now, it was over a year of waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that, after that surgery, then we would look at transferring our embryos. And then we had another surprise pregnancy while we were waiting.
Wow.
Yeah. Just 2 weeks before my surgery date was booked, I found out I was pregnant. And again, it was one of those moments I was like, no, it couldn't be again. It couldn't be. And we did, again, multiple tests because I said, oh, this can't be, again, when you walked through that many years of infertility, your brain just starts to tell you it's not possible. And so I had to call and cancel my surgery and just go forward with our pregnancy with our son. And with as much hope and optimism, despite not having, that fibroid removed, and hope that it didn't cause any issues, which thankfully it did not. But it was a surprise. And so I wouldn't say that we went in saying like, now we're ready to be pregnant again, because it was a surprise. But it was the surprise we needed at that time.
And I don't know if you ever are really ready, right? It's like sometimes this is how it just has to happen.
Yeah, that was kind of the beauty of it being a surprise, because when it comes to IVF, like, you control so many parts of steps in the process. And I don't know if I could have made that decision, well, now I'm ready to do the transfer, because I don't know that I ever would have been ready in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did, let's hear about how that pregnancy went. Like, I'm sure, like you said, getting pregnant again by surprise is like, whoa, but a lot of the same similarities as Talitha, right? What were you guys feeling when you saw that pregnancy test?
Yeah, I think it was living in the reality of we were overjoyed to be pregnant and terrified at the same time. That pregnancy, I would say, other than the loss of Talitha, was the hardest thing that I have ever done. It really did bring me to the end of myself. And all of these pieces, or this illusion of control that I thought I had, it goes out the window. There's so little that you can control in pregnancy. And it humbled me in really incredible ways. But also, that pregnancy for me was riddled with anxiety and worry. And that it was really hard to manage the hope and the anxiety together. I felt that really difficult. In so many ways, it just felt dangerous to hope, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Again, when you talk about the way that trauma and infertility and over years and years, your brain gets trained to guard itself, and your brain gets trained to say, like, we can hope, but also it's never worked out before, you know? And so what I really had to do, it felt so risky to hope for a baby that might actually make it into my arms. And I had to go back and remind myself of, again, stories of hope. And I had to remove myself from a lot of the infertility community that I'd been a part of for so long, and stories of loss, because I just couldn't bear the weight of those at that time. And so I just filled my brain with stories of hope. And it was a matter of waking up every single day and saying, today we know that our baby is alive. And today we can be joyful and excited. And I can't worry about tomorrow. I have to just focus on what I know today. And the truth I know today is that my baby is alive and he is well. And that was really hard, but really healing for us to do. At the same time, you know, there's the medical piece of it. I knew I wanted my midwives who had followed me through my pregnancy with Talitha and did all of my postpartum care with Talitha. I knew I wanted them to be the team to deliver if possible. But I also knew I needed a lot of medical reassurance. And so my midwife team beautifully let me work with the MFM unit that delivered Talitha at McMaster throughout my pregnancy. And what I was most concerned about when I first went in to the MFM unit was that they were just going to say, well, that was a fluke, so we're not going to worry about it. You know, it was a fluke chance that your water broke. There was nothing we could have done to stop it, so we're not going to worry about it in this pregnancy. And my doctor was just a gift. She understood the weight of loss. She didn't just shove it off as not a big deal. She really understood the gravity of what I was feeling as somebody who was pregnant after loss. And so, you know, she said to me, how often do you want to be here? And I said, how often will you take me? Because I knew I needed that reassurance. And so I was there every other week for ultrasounds and checks. And, you know, they did everything they could possibly do to check and monitor and make sure that I didn't go into early labor. And I had a really positive pregnancy until 17 weeks. And then I hemorrhaged at home with Silas. And it was around the same time that we lost Talitha. And again, you know, when you speak of trauma, it just triggered all of
course it did.
all of the things. And there was it was probably tied to placenta previa, but even that, they were like, we don't know for sure that's what caused the hemorrhage. But he was fine, surprisingly, you know. So we spent an entire day at the hospital waiting. And I said to Tim, oh, I can't believe we're going through this again. I can't believe we're here again. And the relief when we finally had the ultrasound at the end of I don't know why they waited to the end of the day, but they didn't do a Doppler or an ultrasound at all. So we only found out 8 hours into our stay that he was okay. And that relief was just huge. But also, the anxiety just amped its way, just amped up, because for the rest of my pregnancy, it felt so precarious.
And, like, am I going to bleed today?
Yes.
What's going to happen today?
What's going to happen today? And the space of, in just 1 minute, and it was, a little bit of mirroring Talitha. I literally bent down to pick something up and I hemorrhaged. And so it just felt like in 1 second I can bend down or squat or, and so what that did for me is actually really limited what I did in my pregnancy.
I was going to say, you probably felt like you couldn't move.
Yeah, I just really, and they told me not to, don't work out or do anything heavy, no heavy lifting, all of those things. But I just felt like, I was like, I can't even go for walks. I was so nervous about what could happen. It also meant we couldn't travel. I couldn't fly, and we couldn't, they advised us to stay in the country. And so all of these pieces, again, these dreams that you have of your pregnancy, and, I watched people go on baby moons and just live their normal lives pregnant. And I just felt like, oh, I can't even imagine what that would be like. And we took a long time to kind of go public and share that we were pregnant. With our close circle, we shared really early on. Because I knew they had walked so beautifully through grief with us that I knew they could handle whatever would come from this pregnancy.
Well, and you needed support.
Yeah. And I wanted to share the joy with them. I wanted them to be, that's something from Talitha's pregnancy that I realized is live in the moments of joy that you have, however short or long they might be. And so we did. We told people, our very close circle, early on, but everybody else, I waited till I was 7 months pregnant to tell. And sometimes I would just show up to something in person and they're like, oh, you're pregnant.
Can relate.
Yeah. And so for me, it was just this piece of protection that I needed. Yeah. I needed to wait to tell people. And, even those pieces of, one of the hardest things for me was to say yes to a baby shower, because it felt like that was committing to the baby being here. And I had this incredible friend group that kept asking, when can we throw a shower? When can we start planning? And it took me a long time to get there and say yes. And I'm so glad I did, because my memories of those days are so special. And then even unpacking all of the things from the baby shower, I couldn't do it. I felt so stuck. And I remember looking around the space that was going to be the nursery at our room, and I was like, we're never gonna be ready for this baby. I can't do it. And my mom has 5 sisters, or she's one of 5. And all of my aunts came over a couple of weeks before I was due, and they set up our entire house. They washed every piece of baby clothing. They reorganized my kitchen. They, helped us organize frozen meals that had been made for us. And they unpacked everything for me. But one of the things I realized in pregnancy was that was just one of the pieces I couldn't do. And I think it was because it's so hard to hope that I couldn't imagine also unpacking that, or packing away that nursery if he didn't make it. And it felt like this impossible last step. But also once they did it, it was freeing. That was the step that took me to the place that, oh, he's going to come home, and this is where I'm going to hold him. And I would sit in the rocking chair that a friend gave me and look out the window, and I could start to envision actually holding him, actually being home with him and nursing him in this spot. And that was a gift for me to have them do that.
Well, it sounds like they took some of that load off for you so you could have the space to do that, right? Because like having to do both of those things, that's what puts you over that threshold, right? You're like, I can't hope and do this. It's like, at least if they took that part for you, you had more space to be able to go there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the word we use in our house a lot is capacity, and grief takes away so much of your capacity. And sometimes it is the capacity to just function, plan meals, or
totally
regular life things. Your capacity to function in them can dwindle so much. And you will be surprised, I have found years after grief in different seasons that I'm like, oh, my capacity is low right now. I just can't do those things. And just to give space to say, this is what I can handle and this is what I cannot handle is freeing and healing all at the same time.
We have the same kind of motto in our house, but we use threshold. Like my threshold is really low right now.
Yeah.
Like my threshold is low, or like I have a pretty high threshold right now. And that's because I had my friend do that, or, I could take on a little bit more right now because I've offloaded this. And yeah, same thing in
I
our
like that.
house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good word for it too.
So what did it look like? What did the last few weeks look like? So your aunties came, they loved on you, they set things up. You got there, you went there, and you envisioned. What did it look like after that?
Yeah, I was really lucky. My third trimester was great. I think I felt the best in my third trimester in those last couple of weeks that I had my whole pregnancy. And so that was a gift just to feel great. And I really did try and savor every minute of it. I knew, again, when you walk through infertility, it's not a given that you will have another baby or that you will be pregnant again. And so I went in feeling like this could be my last pregnancy and I want to savor all of it. And so, we did the photos finally that we had been putting off. And I'm so glad that I have those photos. And it was a lot of, again, my capacity was still low because my anxiety was high. The risk felt so great to not bring him home. And so it was a lot of just filling my cup with, the friends that I needed around, the activities that were life-giving for me, and a lot of being home. One of the things is with Talitha, from when my contractions started to when she came, was about 40 minutes. And so I never wanted to be very far from home because it was such a quick labor with her. And because it was so early in my pregnancy, we didn't know, will this be an indicator of your next labor, or is it just because she was so early? So we just didn't go very far from home. We really did kind of settle in, and I gave myself space to dream of what might come. And I gave myself space to dream of the ideal birth story that I wanted, because I hadn't given myself that space before, and so I gave myself permission to make the playlist of songs that I want to listen to and to talk through my ideal birth plan, because everything before that was, my birth plan is just a living baby. Like, if I come home with a living baby, that's all I care about. And that's still the only thing I cared about. But I hadn't given myself permission to say, you can want a baby to come home and you can also want your birth to go a certain way. Like, it's okay to want both of those, and give yourself permission to want both of those. And so, yeah, when I went into labor, it was 3:00 in the afternoon, and I felt actually really relaxed about it. I stayed in the bathtub from, about 3:00 until 6:00 or 7:00. And we slowly shuffled our son off to my mom's. And it just felt like a really beautiful, relaxing time at home that I could soak in those last moments of pregnancy and prepare my mind for what was to come. I had a midwife team, but I also had a doula. My aunt is a doula. And for me, one of the really important pieces of having a doula there was not just for myself, but for Timo, because my labor with Talitha was so traumatizing for him. I knew there was a chance that he might dissociate from the whole process. I knew there was a chance that it would be really overwhelming for him. And so I wanted support not only there for me, but also for him. And that was a really important decision. And I'm so glad we made it after, going through labor. We went into the hospital about midnight. When I got to the hospital, I was 7 centimeters dilated. And I thought, well, we're going to be in and out, no problem. Like, this is going to be fast and quick, and he'll be here in no time. And at that point, my contractions were, about 2 minutes apart, lasting about 1.5 to 2 minutes. So I was like, we're in this, like, he's coming soon. And then I labored through the entire night, and he was not coming. And I was only 1 more centimeter. 9 in the morning, I was only 8 centimeters dilated. I was like, he's not coming. And we were running into issues with his heart rate dropping when he when I was having contractions, and we had been laboring all night long, and the medical team came in and they said, hey, for these reasons, you might want to consider a C-section. We can keep going. They were really great at laying out all the pros and cons of both sides and, saying, these are the reasons why we might lean to a C-section. These are the reasons why you might want to consider a natural birth and still laboring longer. But at that point, because of our history, and for me, having the same midwife team that took care of me with Talitha, it was really important to have them there at the hospital with me, with Silas, because I knew they would get it. Like, they would understand the complexity of a birth after a loss. And so we decided on a C-section because I just mentally needed him to be there and healthy. I knew that I didn't want to be rushed into the OR for a C-section. If I was going to have a C-section, I wanted it to be as calm and relaxed as a C-section could be, per se. Because at one point in the middle of the night, his heart rate had dropped enough that they did have to race me into the OR. And then his heart rate came back up. They're like, oh, no worries, we'll just walk on back. But I knew for myself and also for my husband that wouldn't be a positive experience of birth for him. And so we decided on a C-section. Looking back, maybe would I have chosen something different if I had been in a different mental state? Maybe. It's hard to say. But what we did at the time, what was best for us, given our whole history. And I think that's something that's really important in birth.
It is really important because it doesn't, what matters at the end of the day is that you feel good about your decision. You feel safe in your decision, and that looks different. Safety looks different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And when you are thinking about the whole story, you have said goodbye to a baby before. Of course, you just want this baby in your arms. You've waited long enough, right?
Yeah, and that's when you say waited long enough, because I remember saying to the doctor, I said, so what you're telling me is in 35 minutes, this baby, no matter what, will be in my arms. And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay, let's do it.
You're like, well.
I was like, that's what I need.
Exactly. To a lost mom, you're speaking my language. Like, that's what we want, right?
Yeah.
So
like,
it's almost impossible to decide anything differently at that point. So,
exactly. So that was the piece. I said, okay, let's do it. And Silas was born. And, the thing I really envisioned in my birth story, or, those moments that you yearn for, was them putting him on my chest. And for me, initially, that was through a vaginal birth, and I had just, dreamed of that. But we got that moment when he came out, and I remember just sobbing to Tim Owen and saying, is it real? Like, is he really here? Because it felt like an accumulation of so many years of grief just coming out in that moment. And it was a gift. It was a gift to...
It's just so good that you're like, this is so good. Is this, can I trust this good moment? Right?
Yes. Yeah. And then I had, what do you say? Can I trust it? That I had terrible postpartum anxiety, because I was like, can I still trust that he's going to stay, afterwards? But that moment was just, it was beautiful to hold him and to have so many years of grief just not answered, but healed. Healed a little bit, and it will never, he's not the healer of all of the grief, but he is a piece that started to, put us back together, and it was such a gift.
The rainbow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. Well, I'm so glad that you guys felt supported and loved, and you were given that beautiful moment, and it didn't have to be a crazy event, that it could be peaceful, and you guys deserve that. You deserved that peaceful, beautiful moment with your brand new baby boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a gift, right? And that's this paradox of loss, is that because of the deep sorrow, you can exponentially feel joy, right? And those pieces I'll never take it for granted because of what I have walked through in the past.
It's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I mean, loss does have a way of, I always say lost moms are just like kind of built different. And it really does make you appreciate, I'm not going to, maybe not all of us, but, really does give you a deeper like satisfaction and appreciation for just such small things, like having your baby. Everyone loves having their baby placed on their chest, but it's the small things like being able to like look in your baby's eyes. Like, it means so much. So I'm so happy that your baby boy is here and safe, and that you guys get this. Now, what does life look like for you guys now? Or how are you keeping Talitha a part of your family? What does that look like for you guys now?
Yeah. We in our family, we talk about her all the time. And I think that's the first thing, is just the acknowledgement that she was. Paul, our son, really beautifully tells Silas about Talitha all the time, and it's so special. And I remember the first time he did it, I was bathing. I just taken Silas out of the bath, and Paul was laying beside Silas, and then he whispered in her ear, "We have a sister, but she died." And he whispered it, and I said, "Paul, honey, Mommy doesn't mind if you share Talitha with Silas. I love when you share Talitha with Silas." And I think for him, it was permission to talk about it, and permission. I mean, he's always talked about it before, but to talk about her with Silas. And so I will, hear him often saying, "You have a sister and her name was Talitha," or actually right behind me is, we have a photo of her, and we have her ashes behind me. Just on a little section in our living room, and he'll often bring the pictures of Talitha over to Silas, and he'll show her. Or we have the hospital made us like a weighted heart that it was the weight of her when she was born. And same thing, he'll bring the little heart over to Silas and show her and say, "This is what Talitha weighed when she was born." And so those are just these beautiful moments of watching my son keep her alive. For our other son who never got to meet her, I will happily talk about her to anyone who will listen. And then there's other pieces where I think I honor her in the way that I will share why or how I'm reacting to something, And so spaces to say, I'm still grieving, and this is why this brings me to tears. What I've learned in this process is that having one living baby does not take away from the grief. And really what it does for me in this season has even amplified pieces of that grief, where Silas has hit all of these different stages and milestones. And there's been times where it's a reminder that Talitha never got to meet that milestone. We never got to hear her laugh. We never got to see her walk. And so there are times where also we honor her just by giving space to remember that we just loved her so deeply, and we would have wanted her here. We would have wanted her to experience all these things as a family,
It's life, right?
Yeah. And so even this weekend we were away, and it was the first time that we were away at a beach, and my boys were digging in the sand together. And it was one of the first times that I've really seen them like play together because of the age gap. And it just was this beautiful moment of recognizing this is the thing I've been waiting for so long. And yet there's somebody missing from the picture. Right? And so I think that we honor her by not forgetting that she's missing from the picture. And we honor her by just remembering our love for her and just integrating it and weaving it into so many moments as a family. Yeah.
So beautiful. I love that. I find them to be so amazing because you always wonder what they're thinking about, right? When they come up to you and like say, it just kind of sometimes comes out of nowhere. And you're like, what are you thinking of that like Talitha came up? And they also just have such a beautiful way of just like saying how they feel. And you're like,
Yeah.
they really sometimes we're not prepared and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
but they really do keep our babies' memories alive. And they don't have any like of these adult thoughts in their head that prohibit them from saying it. They're just honest. They're like, I'm thinking about my sister and like, this is how I feel. And you're like, oh, thank you so much. Because like, as a mom, you think about your baby all the time, right?
Yeah.
So to know that another little human is thinking about your baby and bringing it up, and that's like being a part of your daily life is just so pure. And it really helps keep that memory alive. And I'm sure, your son sees that through you, right? You're his mirror and you're giving him permission to be able to do that. So I think that is just so beautiful. And I hope that they never stop talking about her. And I'm sure they won't. Well, Siobhan, I just want to say thank you for, being here and sharing your babies with us and sharing your heart with us. And, I'm so glad you got to share your birth stories. They're so important. And I know that there is going to be a lot of moms who listen to this and to hear your story and could see so much of themselves through you and, be able to get permission for so many things. And also just like have that ability to hope, just like how you and I, we talked about how we were looking for those stories that just like made you hope. And I know that your story is going to be that story for someone else. So thank you so much for sharing it. And love being in your energy today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for making this, because you have been such a gift to me, and your story was such a gift to me. Both your lost stories of William and Vienna when I was in that really new, deep season of grief, but also your story of Senna, and just, again, hope, to hold on to stories of hope. And so thank you for everything you've done for our community, because you have been a gift.
Thank you so much. If you enjoyed today's episode and you are looking to feel a little less alone in life after loss, don't forget to hit subscribe so you can continue hearing real, honest stories from mothers who've walked this path too, and to stay up to date with all future episodes of The Rainbow Connection. If you're looking to connect more, Instagram is where I hang out most, so come and join me in a beautiful community of lost moms for PAL-specific birth education, real-life grief talk, and deep solidarity. You can find me at the.doula.life. And don't forget to check out today's show notes for any resources mentioned in this episode, or head to thedoulalife.ca/podcast for more. And remember, you are never alone. I'll see you in the next episode.